It's a very
spindly ball.
spindly. It's a Joshua Spindly.
It's not really built for outdoors.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to the Corridor of Uncertainty, the outdoors edition of the Corridor of Uncertainty. Because as you can see, we're in a park, we're in Beckett's Park, aren't we, Charlie? There are some crows about. We're hoping it's not going to be too windy. We're hoping it's not going to be too rainy. I mean, if it rains, then we're stuffed. Then this whole idea is over. There are a few grey clouds, but we should be okay. But I tell you what, yesterday, Charlie, we'll probably start with that because there were no grey clouds in sight and we had a lovely day, didn't we, yesterday?
We did, yeah. Yeah, much like cricket, we are screwed if the rain comes, and we're praying that there will be no rain. But yeah, we wanted to be outside because Headingley and, well, much of the UK, it seems like, has had the most glorious sun for the last 3.5 days, up until pretty much as soon as we started to come and record. But yeah, we were at Headingley, the Headingley that you're probably familiar with as a cricket fan, Headingley Stadium yesterday. I was fortunate enough to do my first bit of live from the ground commentary for Leeds Hospital Radio for the morning session of Yorkshire versus Sussex Day 3, which was just absolutely amazing experience, really. I loved it, and made all the better by the fact that Joe Root was batting for a lot of the day. We saw him make 96, all right. Well, I saw the 96, you saw about 50 onwards.
I saw 50 onwards and then ruined it. Because I sat down and said to Charlie, it'd be great if he got a century. I'll film that. I'll start, when he gets to about 95, 96, I'll start filming and make sure I capture that moment that I see Joe Root make a century. And I kid you not, 18 seconds after I pressed record, he got out. So it was absolutely my fault.
Yeah, but brilliant innings from him, fantastically paced. Didn't look like he was forcing the issue at all, but still just compiled runs at an alarming strike rate, and he's really the least of England's worries going into this summer, and we're going to talk about some of those worries this afternoon.
Yes, we are indeed. Now, when I pulled open this doc, which Charlie has carefully handcrafted for me, I saw that the first question was actually more of a general overview of the county championship, which I don't have any idea about, Charlie. So this question works out very nicely for me. Could you tell me, please, what is the county championship, how does it work, and what's it all about? Yeah,
so the county championship is England and Wales's premier first-class competition. Now, first-class cricket, as a definition, basically means, any game given first-class status. So that's red ball cricket, including tests. They are first-class matches. And then there is usually a domestic tournament that is first-class as well, obviously, so players get experience of playing in it. But it's also an important thing in its own right. And the county championship, if you go back over the decades, was like the main draw for English cricket fans. It used to be incredibly well attended. The overseas contingents used to be made up of a lot of the best players in the world. West Indian greats and Indians, Australians would all come over. And it has had a fall from grace in recent decades. Obviously, we had a wonderful day yesterday, but there was about 1,000 people there, and that's considering it was, one of the best weather days of the year. So you kind of get an impression of what it's like now, but that kind of brings us on to part of what we're going to talk about today, is that there's been a debate long running about, should your first class competition be about being an entertainment package in its own right, or should it be purely to breed the next generation of test cricketers? And different people have different opinions on this. Rob Key is very anti-county cricket and is very much of the... Well, that's probably not fair, but Rob Key, he didn't actually play that many games for England, maybe 20 tests or so. So he spent most of his career in county cricket, and he was basically of the opinion that it's not really in the state that it needs to be in terms of preparing you for elite cricket. He says it's not a high performance competition, whatever that means. In the very Jake Humphreys, Stephen Bartlett style of modern parlance. But the county championship, for its downsides in terms of preparing people for international cricket, it's unquestionably the best sort of league product in the world. If you go over to Australia, theirs is much more geared towards, whether on purpose or not, just geared towards being of a really high standard and preparing you a little bit better for international cricket, because they only have 6 teams across the whole of Australia, which means that the talent is really condensed, and it means that you're facing an international level bowling attack most weeks, whereas in England it's a lot more about the counties themselves, and one of the issues really is the fact that there are 18 counties. I think if you were to reconstruct it today, and the 100 is a good example of this, they've only made 800 franchises for now, and I think there's a lot of people in English cricket who would secretly quite enjoy if some of the counties went away. But we've seen Leicestershire and Derbyshire, who would be definitely top of that list, excel really in recent seasons, and Leicester have even got themselves promoted for the very first time. So the county cricket purists would obviously have none of that. So this is all to say, the county championship, it's a fantastic competition in its own right. England have moved away from it as a means of selection in recent years, but as part of the eating of their words that England are having to embark on this summer, after everyone kept their jobs, they've had to say, well, we're gonna roll back some of the things we've said and done. And one of that, I think, which makes following the county championship this spring especially interesting, is that there are actually places in the England side up for grabs that will be decided by county cricket performance for the first time probably in the last 5 years.
Yeah, very good segue there, Charlie, onto the next section. It feels like, when you make a mistake at work or do something a little bit naughty, and the higher-ups say, well, we need to be seen to be doing something, if they're not to let you go. And with, the Ashes not going particularly well, and, the fallout from that, it does seem that, as you said, part of the eating of the words, part of the, if this hierarchy is going to survive, it needs to be seen to be doing something, seen to be changing. And I suppose that this selecting people more from their performance based on the county championship, as a plane is about to fly over now, we're actually sat directly under a flight route to Leeds Bradford. So I think I'm going to ease off for a second, ease off the throttle. We'll gather our thoughts. I'm intrigued to see actually how much of this picked up. I think that's quite a cool thing to have for my sample library, actually. I might use that sometime. I quite enjoyed that. That's quite a good thing. Anyway, yes. Where were we, Charlie? The county championship, they're going to select more players from it based on performance. So, which positions are up for grabs here?
So I think there's 4 positions up for grabs, as I can see a tiny little bit of water on both of our laptops.
No.
We'll just
surely
hope
not.
That doesn't... Think of it, if it is just spitting, then we're fine, but there might be a hard cut to the corridor soon. I think there's 4 positions up for grabs, potentially 5, but I think 4, and it's opening batsman, wicket keeper, opening bowler, and spin bowler, which I think it's fair to say that all 4 of those positions were subpar in the Ashes.
Absolutely. So, should we start with wicket keeper as our opening spot? As I am just trying to keep tabs of the amount of rainfall that we may or may not get. So yeah, wicket keeper. Who are we looking at? What are the big battles, and what are you expecting?
Well, I've put this one first because it should be the most cut and dry in a way, but it's also then immediately caused the biggest headache at the same time. Because number 1 in the county championship averages and run tallies right now is a young man who you may have heard of called Jamie Smith. He's started the season like a house on fire. He's got 200s and a 50 already. He seems to have made some crucial tweaks to his technique that had been bothering him in Australia. And I do think, in my opinion, this should be a simple, okay, well, you've had a bad Ashes. You were very good up till that point in your young career. We'll back you to sort it out. There's a couple of reasons why it's not that simple. First of all, as we've discussed before, he's not been keeping for Surrey. That's not his job at Surrey. He bats 4 this season. No, he's been batting 3 actually, which you might have thought might be to try and push his case for a different role in the England 11, but it's actually been primarily just to get Ollie Pope back down to 4. Now that his time at number 3 is done for England, I think Surrey have thought, well, 4 is his best position. There's no need for us to keep persisting with having him at 3. So Jamie Smith's up to 3, and to be fair, has shown the technique to be able to, weather the new ball, although it has been very flat conditions for most of Surrey's games so far. The other reason why this is complicated is that second in the run scoring tally is a man called James Rue, who is a wicket-keeper batter. So this is always the case for England. It's something that we produce a hell of a lot of across formats, but it's quite a frustrating position to be in when you're on the hunt for batsmen, and the two that emerge as the front runners in the form book play the same position, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's it causes some selection problems. Do you think it's when you talk about having a good problem, having strength in depth in one position, but then also is it a case of you just rather have a bit more of a spread so you can go, well, I can have them both now?
Yeah, absolutely, and it just raises the question about what's your policy in regards where people bat, and are you willing to just say that these two players both deserve to be in the starting 11? It does worry me, this conversation, because as we'll come on to in the opener section, James Rue is being mooted as a potential option there, but he's a very young man. He's 22 years of age. He's never done the job before. All his runs have come, I think he actually batted at 3 and scored 100 as well this season, but for the most part it's been in the middle order with the gloves. But I think one thing that's probably going against James Rue, well, there's a few things, as much as he definitely will be in the England team within the next few years. I think right now, the middle order's kind of a lock. It's the only position, the only segment of the team with no questions over it, really. And then Smith's form comes into it. Rue himself isn't an amazing wicketkeeper by all accounts, from what I've heard. The wicket-keeping purists wouldn't necessarily be amazed by him. And his younger brother Thomas, is doing his A-levels at the minute and is therefore missing this portion of the season. But people reckon that once he's back, he'll probably take the gloves, and James Rue will be free to move somewhere else, and maybe he would then push his case by moving up the order. But it goes back to what we were saying, sorry, quickly, just about, does the county championship exist to help England or to be its own thing? And Somerset have been chasing the title for a number of years now, and their head coach basically just said, we're not going to move James Rue to open because that doesn't benefit us in our quest for the Division 1 title. We don't really mind whether England are thinking about opening with him or not, because we don't want him there. He's in our engine room. He's churning out runs, and he's our wicket keeper. Very
interesting. So that we do see clashes of heads then between these, the county championship sides and England. And does that ever? Because I mean, the ECB. You told me yesterday about how the contracts are actually provided by the ECB, and they are the ultimate employer. So I'm imagining they would have the final say.
Well, for centrally contracted players, yes, but James Rue isn't that yet.
Right.
It's a select group of players, maybe.
So he would have to earn his England stripes first. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I imagine he would definitely have a central contract at some point in his career, but we're not there yet. So for the time being, Somerset are the ones paying his wages, and they have final say. And nothing has really come out in this whole thing to say what he actually wants. I think ultimately the team do care about their players, and I think if Rue had knocked on the door of his coach and asked for a different position, they probably would have granted it, which suggests to me that I think he's happy probably not to rush his development this summer, even though he would love to play a game for England, of course.
Yeah, and I suppose chucking someone in opening, especially if his first game were to be, because I sort of see both sides of it now, because if you are rushing his development at a county level, well, we've seen, throughout the history of all sport, how that can affect people, and they can very much become nearly men. But then also, I suppose, if his first game at opener is just dropped into a big international with England, and he has a poor start, and suddenly the pressure is on, that can also destroy a career. So it could go either way.
Absolutely, and opening is easily the most specialised position in batting. In test match batting, so you can't just chuck someone up there and expect results. Obviously, it has been done over the years, but I think with a young player who has still got questions over his technique, he's not got a great England Lions record, which is kind of like, the B team, or it's called the A team in cricket, surprisingly. So he, that indicates that he might still struggle against the best bowlers, which he's like obviously going to face at international level. So I do think you would want him coming in at a nice cushy 6 or 7 when he does start.
It comes up all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous how often that area is annoying. Sorry, I had to do it. I do apologise.
It's frustrating. I think if you were going to try and fit them both in, certainly if you'd have asked me this pre-Ashes, my preference would have been for Jamie Smith to be the man to open. That was already being discussed, really, because he is a Crawley-like player in many ways. So the thinking was maybe that you wouldn't lose too much by swapping Crawley out for him, and that he would probably average more in terms of his height, his strength, his ability playing down the ground, punching off the back foot, and on the pull.
And crucially, maintaining the sort of, if it were to be Ben Duckett, the comedy duo.
Yes,
factor.
the big man, little man. I think James Smith's not quite as big as Zach Crawley, but I mean anyone looks big next to Ben Duckett. But so I think if you'd have asked me a while ago, and then coupled with the fact that he's not a full-time wicketkeeper, I would have said that. But after his calamitous Ashes, it feels like it's not the time to be discussing a promotion. Also, last summer he was England's first choice white ball opener. They were trying to turn him into a bit of an Adam Gilchrist, who played that role for Australia so well as their all-format wicketkeeper, but he would bat 7 in a really destructive manner in tests, and then he would open in a really destructive manner in white ball cricket. But that hasn't panned out for the time being. He's been dropped from white ball cricket, so I don't think you should be considering opening with him currently, which probably, I think, brings us quite well onto the openers, because that's the first two discussed. I was going to say, it
feels like the wicketkeeper conversation has bled really nicely into the opening discussion. We mentioned the little man, didn't we, Ben Duckett? I think he scored quite well yesterday. I think I saw in the 90s. Is that right?
Yeah, he's got 250 so far. I think they might have both been in this game even, but he did. He's only just come back into the 4. The same with Root yesterday. They do sort of stagger the re-entry of the England players. To be honest, I think it was a weird one with the openers, because I think, it was felt that was going to be one of the positions that was changed up. I think you actually asked me to try and take a bit of credit in our Ashes series who I thought were going to be the heads to roll. And I actually think I said Zach Crawley and Ollie Pope, which doesn't really fit the heads to roll bracket. Usually, it's a coach or a captain or a director or whatever. But I could just, I'd felt a sense that wasn't coming, as it hasn't. And I thought actually the statement sackings would be to drop those 2 players who had seemed undroppable even in the face of so much criticism. So I do think, even though that Ben Duckett had a worse Ashes than Zach Crawley, it will be Zach Crawley most likely to make way, and he's had a terrible start to the county championship. Once again, he's averaging under 20 with no 50s. Ben Duckett had a terrible Ashes, but that was his first blip really since coming back into the fold in 2022. So I think he was always... I think, England were... People like Golden Key were seemingly quite keen to not rule out Duckett being dropped, whether that was just to threaten him or whether it was to show that they were serious about making change. But I think Ben Duckett secured his opening spot before he stepped onto the pitch for Notts, because even the mere fact that he's there with Nottinghamshire, he's pulled out of the IPL, which obviously has a lot of financial ramifications, and these days carries potentially a 2 or 3 year suspension from the tournament, because they were sick of players doing that, dropping.
So he made a statement out. Then he's saying, I am here for the England side. I want to fight for my place.
Yeah, exactly.
And all that stuff.
Same as Harry Brook when he became white ball captain. He pulled straight out, and I do think it's become. We'll talk about the IPL a little bit later, but there's actually not that many, England internationals in it this year, and I think at least on some level it's because it's become clear that it's untenable to be an England all-format player and an IPL player because of when the IPL is and just how busy your schedule is in general. So I think Ben Duckett sticking his hand up and saying, I want to play the county championship to fight for my place, even if it had gone not great, I still think that was, what he thought that England were looking for. And I think that's why he's done that.
It's quite good for his PR as well, I suppose, as someone that was, caught up in a few little incidents off the pitch, off the field during the Ashes. So to kind of make a little bit of a statement and say, I'm still fighting for my place, might do that his image a little bit of a...
Yeah, it was quite unfortunate, really, because he gave a candid interview saying basically just that and how I need to improve my image. And then, 2 days later, a story broke about him driving 93 miles an hour and getting a speeding ticket. But that was from, before,
yeah.
But it just came out because, it went to court and whatever. But it was just unfortunate timing for him. But now that's out the way. Hopefully now...
His image will now be golden
down.
angel, yeah.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed anyway. So we discussed there the openers in terms of the batting. Shall we discuss the openers in terms of the bowling?
Well, there's many more opening batters to be discussed.
Then let's not do that. Let's discuss... Oh yeah, we already touched on one, didn't we? Let's row back. I'm getting too eager. I think it was the sight of a couple of dogs racing across in front of us here, and I just got carried away with the pace of everything.
It's not your fault, Johnny, because I'm looking at a different document to you. I have a sub-document which
have a sub-document?
Has stats which you're not privy to. So
I have not been given the key.
We have many more people to discuss. So we know that that it's probably going to be one of the openers dropped, and it will probably be Zach Crawley, meaning there's one space available. We also know that it wouldn't, in my opinion, be a good idea to put Rue or Smith there just to fit both of them in. So the question then becomes, well, who in the county game could replace Zach Crawley? And there's a number of names. First of all, the entire Durham top three is worth a mention. I was telling you yesterday about how they were kind of the team that adopted Bazball. Yes. And it went really well for them initially. They got promoted, playing some really good stuff. And I think I was also telling you yesterday about how the batting points works. Also the nice people in front of us were telling us how it works, because I didn't fully understand. But I think, the nature of the way the batting points works, and you only have 110 overs to secure batting points. Bazball actually really played into Durham's hands, because they could get up to 450 within that time every time, and just when they were winning they were just accumulating points, and even when they were drawing. So they won Div 2 at a canter, then they came up and they looked pretty handy for a season or two, fighting in mid-table, but then they dropped back down surprisingly last year, collapsed on the final day at Yorkshire to be relegated. That being said, I think it's worth explaining that while the standard is definitely higher in Division 1 than Division 2, it's not like in football where you would see like a mass exodus of players if a team was relegated, like Tottenham Hotspur, for example. Your county is kind of your county, especially if you're going to be an England international. You don't actually really play that much on a yearly basis, so there's no need for Joe Root to leave Yorkshire when they get relegated, or when they did, because he lives in Yorkshire, and he's only going to play a handful of games there per season. So, the mere fact that a team has dropped into Division 2 doesn't discount its players from being considered for selection, and especially because the Durham players were doing well in Division 1 as well. Playing
time. I think I've already got one plane recording. I don't feel like I need another one. It should be okay. The plane has gone, and while that plane was overhead, me and Charlie had I asked him a question, which I'm guessing it means it's a question worth discussing. Is that if Yorkshire get relegated, let's just say they do at the end of this season, and Joe Root therefore plays a couple of games, dips his toes in to Division 2, I would imagine that, Haaland in the Championship, if Man City got relegated or whatever it might be, would bang in loads of goals and just kind of stat pad. Is that the same?
No, I don't think the gap is as big. To be fair, just bowling in general is a little bit more. Div 2 bowlers that do well are snapped up by Div 1 teams, because the bowlers really win you the championship. But I think, to be honest, in Div 1 and Div 2 of the county championship, there's not going to be anyone that's too good for Joe Root. I mean, the only people he consistently struggles against are the Australian quicks, and they're not going to be in the county championship. So I know what you mean. It is a little bit of a drop off, but I feel like those early games for someone like a Joe Root is more just about getting your eye in, just getting in form. And if you face some slightly less skilled bowlers while doing that, then I don't think it's too much of an issue because he knows his game inside out. But yeah, back to Durham, the three players, two players really in consideration are Ben McKinney and Emilio Gay. Good name.
Great name.
So Emilio, they both have been in and around the England Lions setup for a couple of years now. They've both been on England's radar. I think Ben McKinney especially was being touted even last year as a potential future opener for England. He's left-handed, but he is really tall and is aggressive, so he could fit the Crawley mould. It would just be that you'd lose that left-hand, right-hand partnership. He started the season well on paper. He's averaging 73, but as has kind of been the theme of his career thus far, he's sort of a feast or famine player. I'll say that again because I know you liked it last time. He got a double 100, I believe, this season, but that's his only score over 50. Whereas Emilio Gay, his average is less good, but he also has got 100, and it was in tougher batting conditions, and he'll definitely be being considered. He was meant to be playing for Italy in the World Cup, but he got injured. But it's cricket. That doesn't really. He'll step straight into an England shirt if and when required, and he's definitely up for that. He is English. I think he's English born, or at least moved here very young. So I think they're both definitely in consideration. I think I like the look of McKinney, and I think the fact that England have discussed him is probably helpful to him in pushing his case. The fact that he's already been considered before, we're really getting
we are surrounded by crows. Is this a death omen? Are we? Is this the end for us? The final podcast, the podcast of crows.
Emilio Gay in a very good interview that he gave to Wisden recently, though, was quick to not discount Alex Lees, who's Ben McKinney's opening partner at Durham, and Gay comes in at 3. They're all openers really, but obviously there's not 3 spots. He was the man in possession when Bazball began. He was the first player to be dropped after the first home summer because England had an amazing summer in 2022, but it was kind of in spite of the top 3. Like the opening partnership of Crawley and Lees was really not working, and they both kind of did as poorly as each other. It was decided that Lees would be the man to give way, but ever since then, he's really adopted the Bazball mantra and gone from a really, really dour player to someone who actually loves attacking. So all 3 of these players would be helpful because they are naturally aggressive, which would help England. I do think England, have kind of, painted themselves into this corner where they do have to consider everyone now, even though they obviously still want to be an aggressive team. But it would be handy if the person that they picked who had a body of runs also happened to like scoring quickly, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So McKinney and Emilio Gay are definitely up there. I'll just rattle through the other 3 because I don't want this to be a really long podcast. Tom Haynes for Sussex, we might have seen a bit of him yesterday, at least in the field, has been touted because I think as much as for his work in previous seasons as much as this one, because on the face of it, he's averaging 31 with a couple of 50s, so it's not been amazing. But I think he's someone who's been performing for a while now, and also Sussex as a team are doing really well. Asa Tribe is a really interesting one. He'd be like...
That's another great name.
Yeah, it is. And he's been playing for Jersey internationally. But again, I'm sure he will switch over to England.
How good a Jersey?
Huh?
How good a Jersey as a side?
They did all right in the T20 World Cup qualifiers. I think they could have qualified, or I think it was either that or even the fact that they got to the qualifiers was notable. But he's good. He wears glasses as well, so he's fun. Yeah. But I think he came up with Glamorgan. They were sort of the surprise promotion last season, and it does seem like they're probably going to struggle. And I think he's the one that would have needed a really good start to the season to push his case, and he's struggled so far. He's averaging 28 with 150. And then the other 2, if England really wanted to eat their words and just admit that everything they've been doing is wrong would be Hasib Hamid and Dom Sibley, who were two players, Hamid for Notts and Sibley for Surrey, who were one of the many carousel of openers that England tried in the 2021-ish era that didn't pan out. Both played incredibly dour cricket and really just looked not good enough for Test cricket, but then both since have just had fantastic runs over multiple seasons in the county championship and have both clearly gone away and thought about their game and what didn't work for international cricket, even though it worked for county cricket. As going back to what we were saying, sometimes because might it be the low bounce or the fact that all the bowlers are like 75 miles an hour and they're just nipping it off the seam, it forces you to create, or there's no high quality spin. You end up building these techniques that are great for churning out county championship runs but get found out pretty easily at international level, and both of them have clearly thought about how they can improve the game regardless of whether they just played county cricket for the rest of their careers, and it's worked for both of them. Both of them have had 100 for each of them at the start of the season, but if either of these were picked, it would be, as I say, much more. Same with Tom Haynes about what they've done consistently over the last few seasons. I do think that, given the fact that England have already tried them both, maybe if there was a quite defensive opener who England hadn't tried yet, maybe they would think about that. But part of the problem with trying to find an opener is that before Crawley and Duckett nailed down that spot for 3 years, they had tried everyone they could possibly tried. So these players, like theoretically in their peak, around the early 30s, they've all been tried before. So it would be a case of going back to the well.
A bit of humble pie as well, maybe, as you pointed out with the especially with those last couple, not potentially lining up with the philosophy that has been laid out for the last. At what point do you slowly reel back on that whole idea? I'd love to ask you, Charlie, about who you pick, but we'll get onto that at the end, shall we? We'll have a...
Yeah, we'll build a team at the end, but I would just say I probably think it would be one of the two Durham lads, McKinney or Gay, would be my early prediction, because they kind of fit both. They're a triple win, really, because they've scored runs in the last few years, they're aggressive and they're new. So I think that would satisfy everyone in theory.
Check every box, yeah. Sounds good. Are we ready to move on to the... I don't want to jump the gun again.
No, go for it.
Are we ready to move on to... So, we've discussed the opening batsman. Let's move on to who will open the bowling, Charlie.
Yeah, I think England's bowling attack's in a weird place because, that attack that played the Ashes just clearly wasn't an attack. And it was, found wanting by the end. But three of the 4 or 5 quicks that we were using, you would still want them in and around the team every week. But all they need is just one guy in there who will just take the new ball and don't worry about pace. Just focus on accuracy and movement and utilising the new ball, not wasting it bowling back of a length. And then your Archers, who Archer and Atkinson have definitely showed that they can take the new ball, but probably just it's not quite their best skill set. Maybe it is for Archer, but definitely Atkinson not. So I think if you have one of them taking the new ball alongside a genuine just new ball stalwart, and then you have your X factor in Josh Tongue or Bryden Carse as your first change, I think that all of a sudden looks like a very dangerous attack again. And then you've got Stokes, of course, to come into the fold as well. So it's really one position, I think, same as the opening batsman that we're looking for here. Maybe because it's bowlers and you're more likely to rotate, England might grab 2 for the first squad of these guys. But I wouldn't be surprised if they just picked one and then picked all the same quicks that they had been before. And it's the Chris Wokes role, really, that needs replacing. I think the options are people... In this case, it is all people that have played before for England to varying degrees, and that is Sam Cook, Matt Potts, Matthew Fisher, And most controversially, which I was kind of filling you in a bit on yesterday, because obviously we were watching him bowl, and captain Sussex is Ollie Robinson, the much maligned Ollie Robinson. So Sam Cook played one test last summer, the Zimbabwe test. Didn't go very well for him. He wasn't able to keep a lid on things in what was a high-scoring game all round. But he is the man over the last few years that has been that real county metronome, or at least, you know, the English player that isn't ancient, that's been doing that. And he, once again, unsurprisingly, has started the season really well. He's got 15 wickets at 17. I think he's leading, or at least joint leading, or up there in terms of most wickets. His economy of 3.75, though, I can't confess to have watched much of him, so I can't say what's going on there. But that's surprisingly high for him, and I think as much as he's not known as someone who goes for runs, I think if you factor that and his test debut in, I think if he isn't going to be able to keep a lid on things, then that would lead me to seriously question whether he's the right man for this role, because I do think that is part of the job that this player is going to have to do. But if we're talking about not keeping a lid on things, I think you'll probably remember Matt Potts' singular Ashes appearance in the final test, when he just got absolutely carted. Yeah. He got brought in for the last test. I was clamouring for him to play the whole time.
You
of course,
were
I
a big
was.
fan, weren't you?
And he got absolutely marmalised. But he's also had a very solid start to the season. 15 wickets at 21 with an economy of 2.8. It's always been quite hard to know how much Stokes and McCullum like him, really, because he started Bazball in the team. But that was more just because, other than Anderson and Broad, it was one of those summers where, even though they were 40 and they should be the ones breaking down, it was everyone else in the country that got injured and they were fine. So England were just kind of scrambling to get one extra in there, and Potts was having a bit of a breakout season for Durham at the time in Div 2, so he got the nod. But then there's been many other opportunities for England to pick him over the years, and they haven't. He has been in and out of the team, but he's clearly not that highly thought of. But then it's hard to know how much of that was just his lack of pace relative to his teammates. And I think, as we've already said, England are going to row back on that a little bit. So maybe that brings him back into the fold. Matt Fisher has only played plain.
This one's got propellers, which I quite enjoy.
This one's a bit quieter, I think.
Yeah.
I reckon that's come from Ireland.
What makes you say that?
Because it's smaller.
Yeah.
And it's green.
It's small and green, and they haven't got the technology to
No.
get rid of propellers and use jets.
There's a rainbow coming out the back of it. No, I just think... Well, no, I don't mean small because Ireland are a small nation. I mean because it's close and you don't need a jet to get there.
Nobody wants to come here from Ireland.
Yes, sure. Yeah, Matt Fisher played one test, I think, for England in 2021 or early 2022. But he has since moved to Surrey, which means he's on England's radar. It's kind of the like Big Six version, where it's kind of like, you know, you can push your England case better at Surrey than anywhere else. He's had a slow start to the summer, just the 5 wickets at 56, but his economy's been decent. Ollie Robinson's the really interesting one, because this would be the ultimate we fucked it selection from England to get him back in, because he is someone that they clearly put their foot down, I think for fairly good reason, and said, you know, he's not in consideration anymore. And as I was explaining to you yesterday, it's a mixture of fitness issues, attitude issues, and just more off the field stuff. But he was just an amazing test match bowler. You know, he wasn't quick, but he was relentlessly accurate. He could extract movement on pitches that no one else was getting it. And he was out bowling Broad and Anderson towards the end of their career. The only problem being then was that you didn't really need all three of them in the team. And even though his stats were better, you know, it's still Broad and Anderson. But I think now they're gone, I think this England team's crying out for him, really. And if he can just stay a little bit fitter, get a little bit slimmer, which is hard to tell in person, but it looked like he had done yesterday.
He looked good, didn't he?
Yeah, we've had this before though. I remember, you know, he was out of the team that first Bazball summer when Matt Potts was in the team for that first series, against New Zealand. Then for the second one of the summer against South Africa, Robinson managed to get himself back in fighting shape and slotted straight in for Potts. And he was only going at 83 miles an hour. But that is more than enough for him to become an incredibly dangerous prospect. And he looked unplayable in that South Africa series. Then went to Pakistan on some of the flattest pitches you could ever wish to find. And was just, making it jump at 45-degree angles. He bowled Babar Azam with some absolute beauties in that tour. And I do just think that, yes, he needs to work on himself. And it seems like he has been doing. And I wouldn't consider him if it seems like it's going to be the same situation. But I do think he is the best that England have got to offer in that department at the minute.
You finished that just as I was sorting out various technical issues there. For some reason, my Focusrite switched off. We had a weird thing at the start of the pod where both of our Focusrites wouldn't switch on. They're on now. Mine is on now. Hopefully it will stay on. Luckily, I had a big beep in my ear to signify that... is yours okay, Charlie? It seems okay.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, good. So there's no panic there. There's no panic. Is that all? Is that the bowling discussion? Was there anyone else you wanted to bring in?
Yeah, so I really should have given you this,
It's all right. It's all right.
Just to say that... I think in terms of those X-Factor bowlers, it's still pretty much the same shortlist that will be picked from in Archer, Atkinson, Tong and Cars. But if there's going to be one addition to that crop this summer, it'll probably be Sonny Baker, who had a tough start to international cricket.
Was he not a jazz musician in the 1950s?
Was he?
It sounds like he probably was.
It does sound
and
like
here comes Sonny Baker.
No, he's a very posh white man who plays for Hampshire. But he seems like a good young chap with a career ahead of him.
This one didn't come from Ireland because it has jets. Is it Ryanair? In which case I take it back. It is.
They don't come from Ireland. Really.
Well,
they don't go to Ireland.
No. So that seems like a lack of national pride from Mr. Ryan Air. Anyway, we're not here to advise the business direction of plane air companies. We're here to talk cricket, aren't we?
Yeah, Sonny Baker had a tough start to his international career last summer. He got absolutely carted in his ODI debut at Headingley versus South Africa, and then didn't fare much better in a T20 against Ireland. But I think he's put that behind him for the start of this new season, and he's delivering in red ball cricket, and he's got 13 wickets so far at 21. With a decent economy, actually, less than Sam Cooke's, which surprised me because I thought he'd be the kind that would go for runs but take wickets. But yeah, I think he's not needed right now, same as James Rue, so might not be selected yet, but I think it's only a matter of time before Sonny Baker pulls on an England shirt again.
Should we move on to spin bowling, Charlie? Because it's been the age-old issue. We saw during the Ashes some. I think it was Billy who said that he'd put Shoaib Bashir in business class just as a bit of a sympathy vote because he didn't get the chance to do anything.
He managed to avoid the luggage hold that most of the Surrey team were in.
Yeah, he did, absolutely. So it's been a problem area. How are we in terms of fixing that problem?
This is the one where I really just don't know what to say. And I was looking at some articles this morning to compile my lists. And in the Sky Sports one, it was kind of split into these categories. And the first line of the spin bowling one was just...
Oh, no.
Which kind of sums it up quite well. Shoaib Bashir, incidentally, has had quite a good start to the season at Derbyshire. 9 wickets at 33, an economy of 3.19, which again, I think for him at this stage in his career is quite impressive, really. But England surely aren't going to go there. You'd think that, this I don't know how to word this. It was almost kind of like a trick that England were trying to play on themselves and Bashir by saying Bashir was the best spinner. And it was kind of working to an extent in that they did manage to extract decent performances from him that I think, he outperformed his county numbers in Test cricket, which is quite remarkable. But I think it was, the glass house was shattered by the fact that England clearly weren't confident enough in him to play him. So now that confidence that was instilled into him by Ben Stokes has got to be eroded for now. And then obviously the incumbent, I guess you could call it, is Will Jacks, but he's in the IPL. He hasn't even actually been playing in the IPL yet because he took a break just because of his workload. He played 4 of the Ashes tests and then carried England on his back in that T20 World Cup. I think there was a feeling that he did so well in the T20 World Cup that he maybe nudged his way back into selection across formats. But I think England need someone who's a bit more of a proper spinner than that. Probably not like a full-on specialist spinner. I do think you probably see England go for. Again, this is something that I think England are probably going to, if they already haven't, probably going to change their mind on a little bit, which is that Ben Stokes was very ebullient in the idea when he first came in that he just wanted his spinner to be the best spinner and he didn't care whether they batted. I feel like a more pragmatic approach will probably now be taken where it's like, well, we don't actually have anyone who's that dangerous of a spinner, so we may as well just pack out the batting. And I do think it just so happens that those options for England, with the exception of going back to Jack Leach, they do all bat. So whether it's Will Jacks or whether they go back to Liam Dawson, who of course played the one test last summer, or Rayan Ahmed, or there's a couple of other leg spinners that have done really well at the start of the season as well, Calvin Harrison and Mason Crane, and they're both batting nicely alongside it. Mason Crane got 99 the other day, bless him. And then James Coles, who you would have seen bowling yesterday without realising, but he's talk of the town because he got the most money in the 100. He got £390,000 in the auction. It's kind of just because he's an all-rounder, like a genuine all-rounder. They tend to go for more in auctions because they're a bit more scarce, but that's definitely put him on everyone's radar if he wasn't already. And I was actually really impressed with how he bowled yesterday. He got Johnny Bairstow out bowled when the pitch was offering very little spin. Obviously that's with the caveat of Johnny Bairstow has had an issue with getting bowled throughout his career, so that might have just been a Bairstow thing. But yeah, it's looking bare. It is looking bare. I think I love Rayan Ahmed, of course, but I think he is more of a batter than a bowler. And if he's going to end up slotting in at 8, then is there much point in that? If he's not going to be able to bowl much, or if he's going to get hit for runs when he does bowl, I think shelve Will Jacks for now. Liam Dawson maybe, but I think England clearly I think Ben Stokes isn't that interested in him, and he wasn't impressed by him against India last summer. Calvin Harrison and Mason Crane maybe, but I think leg spin is just so hard to bowl at international level. So I think James Coles is definitely in with a shout alongside Dawson, maybe Tom Hartley as well, who I haven't written down here. But yeah, this is the one where I have no idea where they're going to go, but my guess would probably be that whoever they pick will be able to bat, and that maybe they're still even weighing up the possibility of going in with an all-seam attack again, although I don't think that's advisable.
Very, very interesting stuff. We mentioned earlier, as we always do, that we're going to talk about something later. Let's talk about the IPL now, shall we? So that's been going on. We discussed, of course, that for example, your Ben Ducketts have said no, I'm not going to play in the IPL. I'm going to fight for my place. So what's been going on in the IPL, and where does a certain Bethell fit into all that? Yeah,
so as I said before, there's not actually as many players to mention in this, but very briefly, Punjab Kings are doing really well. Top of the table, unbeaten, and they've never won the IPL, so that'd be interesting to see where they are come the end of the season.
How are your beloved Rajasthan?
They're not bad. They started very well. They're in 4th, but they're 5-3 now. But I think they maybe won their first 5 and then or definitely their first 4 and then have had a wobble. Rajasthan are pretty much always good for a portion of the season, but they do often fall off. But Jofra Archer's back there, and he's doing fantastically by the looks of it, which I don't think is particularly encouraging or heartening for an England Test fan. But it's good to know that he's staying fit and he's bowling well, and he seems to be rediscovering that magic in T20s that he seemed to have lost since his injury. So that's good for him. Then the only other people that need to mention, obviously Will Jacks, we've already said. I think he's not played a game yet. I think he's not been slotted back into the team since his break. Josh Butler's refound a little bit of form. We'll maybe talk some white ball stuff later on in the season, but he's got a couple of 50s, averaging 38, which for him is not spectacular, but it's definitely good enough for an opener. And he's in a new team this season with Gujarat. Bryden Carr's pulled out with a hand injury, and that's significant for the Test team because he might miss some of the tests. But I think, given the Ashes that he had, I think it's all right if he gets put on the back burner just to recover for a little while, because not only it was a weird one where he was unimpressive, but also, bowled with real heart and I think kind of won some fans in that regard, but also clearly took a toll on him. So I think if he is not in the fold for this New Zealand series, then that's fine, and it doesn't mean that he's out of the picture entirely. But yeah, the big one is Jacob Bethell, because we're basically back where we were exactly this time a year ago, which is that Jacob Bethell is at the IPL with Royal Challengers Bengaluru, and he's on the bench and he's not playing. He's played one game, he got 14 off 10. And, this was the exact debate that we were all having last year, saying he should be in the county championship because he should be fighting to try and dislodge Ollie Pope. And I think the fact that Bethell didn't play any county championship early last season, then Pope got given the Zimbabwe job, and then he got 100. So then he got given that first test against India and he got 100. And then even though he fell off after that, Bethell had kind of missed his opportunity to force his way into the team finally.
The sun peeks through. I thought we were going to go through the whole podcast without any, to be honest. I promise you, when we walked out the door, it was lovely. It was beaming down. But let's see how long this lasts. It's currently surrounded by clouds.
Well, I was leaving the gym this morning. I was like, we've got to do the pod outside. Yeah. Even though I burnt my nose yesterday, I don't know if it's being picked up on the cameras. But yeah, so we're just back in this culture war where it's like, well, what's the point in being in the IPL, particularly if he's not playing, because RCB haven't needed him to play a regular role in either of these seasons. And I think that has caused even more frustration about, he should be back in England. The debate has been kind of punctuated by a bit of argy-bargy between Alistair Cook and Kevin Peterson. Alistair Cook saying something and then Kevin Peterson attacking him for saying it. And it's become clear that Kevin Peterson sees himself as a bit of a martyr for this current generation of England players, because he was the first one to really break away and do the IPL rather than England, or prioritise it. And that's back when England were a bit less accommodating about their players doing it, because it wasn't yet apparent how massive it was going to become and how much of the power it was going to wield. So England was still feeling like they could, tell their players not to go, but Peterson always did go. So he now thinks he's paved the way for all these players to do it. So, when Alistair Cook dared to say that Bethell should be back batting 3 or maybe even opening for Warwickshire, and then he could fill that opening spot. Peterson said no because he's at the IPL and blah blah blah. I imagine he made it about him pretty soon. But
I'm getting a sense of whose side you might be on here.
Well, he's just known to be a bit of a weapon, Kevin Peterson. So I'm a bit loath to side with him on anything. Yeah. And I just also think the argument that he and a lot of other people make, which you always hear, I think is a little bit weak, which is basically that there's so much greatness in the IPL that you're actually learning more being there, because he's on Virat Kohli's team, and people would say, well, you're learning more about batting, talking to Virat Kohli every day than you are, facing a Division 2 70-mile-an-hour seamer. And it makes a bit of sense, but it's also like, it's not about necessarily learning, it's about match practice, and Bethell severely lacked that last summer, and you could tell when he had his one innings at the Oval, or both innings at the Oval, he looked like a man who just hadn't played any cricket. Yeah, exactly. So the difference being in this conversation is that he is the incumbent now. He will play that first test at 3, so it's not about him being here to fight for his spot. He's got his spot. It's more about what kind of state is he going to be in once he gets the opportunity. But he seems like a very classy young operator, and I'd probably back him to have a decent summer for England.
Nice. Why do you think he's on the bench for his IPL side?
Well, you can only have 4 overseas players in the team, so it's not always a given that he probably is a better batter than at least one of the batsmen in that team. But if they're not an overseas player, they might get in otherwise. But also, they do have a stacked top order. RCB. They've got Phil Salt, they've got Virat Kohli, they've got Patidar as well. So they're fine really without Jacob Bethell. Basically, it's nothing that he's doing wrong, but it's a strong team. But the IPL is one of those tournaments where you need bench strength, because if someone goes down, and they actually have substitutes there as well, or impact players they call it. So you need good players on the bench, but it is just unfortunate for those players who are on the bench.
Well, we might see more of him as the IPL progresses. Shall we finish, Charlie, with a discussion about what you think the team is going to be? A little prediction. We love our predictions, don't we? So, Charlie, what are you expecting to see?
Okay. I think Ben Duckett will open. I'm going to say... I think it could depend on which of McKinney and Gay have the best month from now until June. But I'm going to say, just because I know he's been on their radar for a little bit longer, that they'll go with Ben McKinney. And then Bethell will be at 3, Root at 4, Brook at 5, Stokes at 6. Jamie Smith will retain the gloves at 7. James Rue will be in the squad as cover, batting cover. That will also be an interesting thing to see whether because they've been very... England have always liked to only pick one batting cover in the squad. So maybe they'll pick an opener and a wicket-keeper this time. But I think if they are going to go for one, it would be James Rue. And maybe that would mean that if a Ben Duckett, say, went down with injury, then James Rue would be opening the batting. But we'll see. That might be another thing that they walk back, because it didn't go very well when Dan Lawrence did that a couple of summers ago. And then the bowling attack, I think Jofra won't go straight back into the team just because he'll be in the IPL and he'll need to build up to it. So I would say Gus Atkinson and Josh Tongue will be 2 of the seamers, and then I'll say that opener, I think it's going to be Sam Cook most likely, but I would go for Ollie Robinson, I think. But I think that would be the real...
Do you think his past transgressions as well might...
Yeah, I think they've got enough reasons to not select Ollie Robinson, which means that it wouldn't just look like them being stubborn. I think there's enough reasons, but I think he's a level above Sam Cook at international level anyway. I think Sam Cook is brilliant in the county championship, but I might be judging him too harshly off one test where he struggled. But I think he's probably in the driving seat right now. And then the spinner,
tough one. Isn't that exactly how they? Yeah.
I know how the person writing that article felt now. I might say, it might just because it's the name I'm looking at right now, but I'm going to say James Coles, just because of all the talk around him. That would really bolster England's middle order. One other thing that I wanted to touch on, which I think they won't do, but there's been a real call for, is if you need someone who's a slightly slower but just really relentless, accurate and skillful bowler, then Ben Stokes has been that guy for England in the last year, and his batting's been woeful. So if you do select a spinning all-rounder, you could then have James Coles in at 6, or James Smith in at 6, James Coles at 7, Ben Stokes at 8, and then 2 more seamers. Well, no, 3 more seamers, sorry, because you'd have your spinner would be an all-rounder. So I think that's an option for England. But it would mean Ben Stokes pushing himself down to 8, or James Coles batting at 8. I think even though Stokes should take a demotion now, his batting's just not been all that, for the past 5 years since he became captain. I think he should at least be batting at 7 and move James Smith up. But I think, and I think you could make a case for him being at 8, but I think it will be someone like a James Coles at 8, and I'll say James Coles for the purpose of a prediction. I'm going McKinney, Duckett, Bethell, Root, Brook, Stokes, Smith, Coles, Atkinson, Tong and Sam Cook to start the first test against New Zealand.
Well, there we go. Charlie has stuck his neck on the line once again. We'll see how that pans out as blustery conditions suddenly.
The camera nearly went. It's good timing, actually.
It's good
really.
time, yeah, as we reach the end. Should we just finish off, Charlie, with some final thoughts in terms of what we're going to be doing going forward from here?
Yeah, sure. Well, F1 is back, finally. It feels like it's been forever. And also, I've just missed podding, really. I've really felt its absence this month. So yeah, F1's back. You're more in a position to talk about that than me, but it's Miami, I believe, next up.
Yeah, and there's been some rule changes as well. We won't go into those too deeply now because it's really complicated. I haven't fully wrapped my head around them yet, but just to kind of summarise it, they're trying to make qualifying better so they don't have to lift off going through really fast corners because that's rubbish. And they've also made a few tweaks to energy deployment during the race so we don't get a repeat of the Ollie Bearman crash where there's mad differences in energy deployment. So the takeaway is the cars are going to get a bit slower, but it's going to, I think, as someone really accurately put it, is it might be better to see slower cars being driven to the limit than faster cars being driven under the limit. So that's the direction I think they're moving in. But we'll see in Miami.
Fantastic, yeah. And cricket-wise, it'll probably just be this until maybe a preview for the New Zealand series once that squad's announced, and you can revel in how wrong I was. But yeah, I'm genuinely intrigued, and it's made, the purists would say the county championship's always great to follow, but I think for me, someone who mostly is thinking about England, especially in the context of this podcast, I think it's just made it even more interesting to follow this early season to see who's going to be able to get themselves in that squad.
And also, to finish off, Charlie now has a Headingley Stadium press pass. So maybe one day we'll bring this podcast to you from one of the most historic cricket venues in the country.
That'd be great. I got it yesterday, and we were considering me instantly abusing my power and using it to sneak in our laptops and just record. I think I was thinking about it still this morning, but I think sitting in the crowd with two mics, even if we weren't recording, it would just look like we were commentating, and we obviously wouldn't have clearance to do that. So I think security would rightly be over to say, what the hell are you doing? But maybe one day we'll have that beautiful backdrop for you.
Maybe one day. We'll look forward to that, hopefully. And take care of yourselves. Thank you for listening and or watching. And we'll see you for the Miami Grand Prix, which is not too far away.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. It didn't rain too much.
Nice. Yeah, no, there was like a couple of spots.